All right, hello and welcome to the EMCON Anime Fest Halloween Edition, 2020 Virtual Edition. This is your moderator, Mark Torres from McCain from the Radio. I'm here for the Q&A panel for none other than super awesome, really cool guy, Austin Tindle. Say hi, Austin.
Hi.
So just letting you guys know, if you have any questions you can just type them in the chat and I'll be reading them. And I know Kelly Gordon from the East Middle Public Library is going to be monitoring the Facebook live stream. So let's start. Well, you could drink while I'll do some talking. Just remember that there's plenty of more programs that is on the East Middle Public Library website. That's www.eastmiddle.info. So let's start with the softballs. We'll charge it up and we'll work our way from there. So Austin, first off, which would be the most characters you are most famous for? Let's start off with that.
Tokyo Ghoul, Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul, Marco Bot from Attack on Titan, Karma from Assassination Classroom, Monoma from My Hero Academia. Those are probably the biggest ones. And Ishigami from Kaguya-sama something.
So I know those roles are very varied because I know you have like a lot of comedic roles and then there's some of those roles that are very serious. Do you find it easy to transition from one to the other when you're reading the dialogue, or is that something you seek out, or do they just give you, hey, you're going to be comedy, hey, you're going to do drama, hey, you're going to do horror? How does that work?
Well, doing voiceover, especially at Funimation, they kind of get you used to kind of going from moment to moment, because the whole script is broken down into cues, and I think for a lot of actors, you'll get, well, back when we did go into the studio, you'd get called in for a few hours and you'd end up going to like 4 different booths, and it'd always be a completely different situation. So maybe it's just, it's kind of the nature of the beast that you take it moment by moment. And the way that I was kind of trained as an actor, I did a lot of Linklater training, which is mostly focused on not like trying to get yourself to one place, but rather to try to get yourself into a very neutral, bendy, flexible place, so that whether it's comedy or drama, it's kind of easy to go either way. And comedy and drama are more similar than like exposition filled protagonist ingenues. So I tend to get hired to do a lot of extreme things, and I might be more used to that than just like being normal.
Well, everybody's normal is normal to them.
It's true.
So you just mentioned how you do piece by piece. So when you go into the recording booth, it's not like you do the whole script at a time. Did they just give you like segments, scene per scene per scene?
Yeah, they there's someone that goes in beforehand, and there's like the script is broken down and by multiple people in multiple ways, and it's not my job, so I probably won't explain it properly. But what I end up with is, on average, a script will have anywhere from like 200 to like 600 cues, and a cue is going to be like one chunk of dialogue. I don't know what the exact parameter is for how long, how much dialogue you can shove into one cue before they got to move on, but it's broken down into different reactions and just the different things that people say to each other. So when you're looking at a script, you're looking at what kind of looks like an Excel spreadsheet, and the cues are numbered, and you just go down and knock them off one at a time. And every once in a while, like if you're in a good enough groove, maybe you'll watch a whole scene and you'll try to do all the cues at once. But more often than not, you end up going back and futzing with them. It's so particular too, because you might have a really good take, but it might not fit perfectly. So there's lots of finagling that has to be done, and it can be difficult to try to act out a scene like that in the normal way that an actor would, because normally you're working with other actors. And very often in this situation, you'll be recording all of your lines before the other person has recorded theirs. So you kind of have to like have an idea in your head of how they're responding to you. And for the most part, that's the director's job to envision that. So it ends up being easier to break it down one response at a time. So you can so they can guide like where the tone of this interaction is going. Man, my camera keeps autofocusing. That's irritating.
I
Stop
thought it
it.
was somebody moving in the background, just focusing it for you. I thought it was the cat.
Trying to get a cool effect going.
Let's see. On the chat, we have from DUNDE, Dundi. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. If
Is
you
it
could,
Wednesday?
yes, look at that. If you could live the life of one of your
We're
characters.
buds.
Oh, okay. So here, and they ask, if you could live the life of one of your characters, who would you pick? And why?
I would probably pick someone from like a slice of life comedy. You know, I'd pick like the main character from Tomo no Rin, because he just has to deal with a love triangle at an agricultural school. He's not got to worry about eating people or murdering or getting murdered. Or, you know, another good choice would be Ayumu from Is This a Zombie? Because he's immortal, basically. He has super drag powers, which I'm a fan of. You know, he just hangs out in a house full of ladies and makes dinner and sleeps. And he gets to, when he puts on a dress, he has superpowers. And I always felt very empowered whenever I used to put dresses on.
Oh, so let's go back a bit.
I have done drag before. Check it out. You can find it on the internet.
Really?
Yeah, go look up what was that called? Silence of the Clams.
Okay.
You'll see me in drag as a spoof of Jodie Foster's character from Silence of the Lambs.
That's see, now we have homework now for all you guys in the chat. You got homework right now. You can go look it up. Silence of the Clams. So let's go back in time to young Austin. Is being
still young Austin.
Younger. Youth child Austin.
Yeah.
Is being a voice actor or an actor in general. Because I always find that people always like, oh, you're just a voice actor. It's pretty much the same thing, except one your face is showing, the other one isn't. So when you were a young, super young Austin, were you like, I want to be in acting, I want to do this for a living, or did you have something else completely in mind?
When I was like really young, when I was in like elementary school, I wanted to be a writer, and I was always writing little short stories and never finishing them. And I don't remember consciously wanting to get into acting, but I was a very dramatic child. Like I was just a very melodramatic little kid. And also very insecure. So anytime I was in a group full of people, I was like trying to be more like them, which helped hone my observation skills. But it started because I was late to the 9th grade. I never actually finished the 8th grade, and I tested into the 9th grade late in a really small school. And all of the electives were taken up except for theater. Like when I like finally got accepted into the school or whatever, they basically said you have to go do theater. And so I was this 9th grader in a very small theater class, and the teacher took a shine to me. So I got a lot of attention and opportunity when I was in high school. I got to play, like, the first play that I ever did, aside from like, you know, being in the Nutcracker as a 4th grader and playing like one of the soldiers or something. The first like play that I ever did was in 9th grade, and I was George in Our Town. And then the next year I was Hamlet. And the next year I was John Proctor. And then the year after that, I was Romeo.
Wow.
So I got really spoiled. But even then, when I went to college, I was studying electrical engineering, and it wasn't until the beginning of my senior year that I switched majors and decided to get out with an acting degree, because it was easier than engineering. But I had gotten cast in a few good shows at UTD in Dallas, and then I had gotten cast in a local community theater production of Romeo and Juliet with a company called Classical Acting Company. And like the day that I got cast in that show, I went back to like my engineering department person, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I eked out this arts and performance degree at an engineering school, and like 18 hours of my senior like credits were independent study. And I convinced them, because I was there on a scholarship, so I only had 4 years before I had to start paying money. I convinced them to let me write a play, direct a play, and act in a play. And so I wrote a one-man show, and I turned it into 3 college classes.
Oh, wow. Do you still have that one-man show? Have you ever thought about, now's the time, we're in the pandemic, you can record it and put it out there so people can see it.
I wonder if it's somewhere. I don't know. It wasn't that good.
But that's very humble of you.
Well, there was one play that I did also write. It was so pretentious. It was about a dysfunctional family, and the title of my play was like his that lights a candle to the sun. I wanted it to be like a Terrence McNally style irreverent dark comedy, but I think it was just silly. I don't know where it is. I have no idea. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
We have another question from the chat. It's from Rad1. Have you ever gotten a script for a character where you look at the lines and think, oh no, not one of these characters? Are there ever any character or character types that you aren't really excited to act out but do anyway?
I mean, yes. Number one, I don't get a lot of heads up for some of the characters that I play. A lot of times I've gotten roles where I didn't necessarily audition, or I didn't audition for that character. So I would just show up. I had no idea who Marco Bot was when I was cast in Attack on Titan. And I enjoyed doing that character. But there's definitely some characters that are more of a pain in the butt. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I've ever gotten a role and gone like, oh, I have to, because like I've never been that secure in my career. Like anytime I get any hours, I'm like, yes, give it to me. But like extreme characters, really, really high pitched characters can be intimidating. There was a character that I played on Tales of Zestiria, and his name was Lunare, and he had this like snagglepuss kind of laugh. I'm not even gonna try to do it, but is that on top of is like that back of throat with a high pitched screechy yelly thing. Go listen to it, and you can hear what I did to hurt myself on a regular basis. And they kept booking me at like 10 a.m. when I would do that, so I'd have to come in, and it's not fun.
Well, since you mentioned the throat, let's do the throat. Do you have any type of warm-up activities for a vocal before you go into a session, or you just up and go?
I'm such a bad student. I don't warm up as much as I should, and now that I'm in my mid-30s, I'm really understanding all the things that like people used to tell me like vocal teachers used to say, but make sure to do all these things. I was like, posh. But now I'm trying to pay more attention to it. And there's a lot of basic stuff that I'll do. Usually I'm really lazy about it. So I'll just, I'll go up and down my pitch scale, and then I'll vibrate different resonating chambers. So I'll like try to work on my chest, and then I'll try to peek out like the at the top of my head. That's annoying to hear. And then there's a thing that I just started doing recently, especially now that we're working from home. Because back when we would go to the studio, like part of my warm up would be just driving to the studio and having an intense conversation with someone. Or like if I went into the space, I would spend the first like 5 minutes telling the director about my day. And that usually ended up just naturally causing me to make all sorts of sounds that opened up the various parts of my body that needed to, stretch. But there's an old theater like tongue twister exercise that I used to do all the time, that I just started recently doing again, and it's called Trinidad. And I learned it in Dallas. I don't know how popular it is. I think it's a Dallas thing, but it just shoves a bunch of those vocal things together. So you you start off with like warming up your breath, and then you add a touch of sound for some internal vibrations, and then you try to move those vibrations up and down your resonating chambers. And then a big one is to try to get rid of the nose and to try to shake the nose up, especially during this winter weather or fall weather. And then you work on your diction and over enunciating and shaking your jaw out. So all those things. But I know a lot of people that'll just like sing Disney songs and that'll do it for them.
Oh, all right. We have another question.
Or Hamilton.
We have another. Oh, Hamilton. We have another question from the chat. Is there anything you'll be in next year or this upcoming year that you can tell us about? So, has there been any productions? Is there anything you can actually allow to say that you're going to be in?
Allowed to say that doesn't already exist. What can I? Hang on. Well, what you will hear me in a lot of the backgrounds of shows, because I've been doing a lot of Walla lately. But the big show that I'm working on right now is Kaguya-sama, Love is War. I had to double check the title. Which is steadily becoming like my favorite show. I just recorded some of it today, and if anybody's watching that show right now, get ready for episode 11. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but
well, I guess we're gonna find out.
So I'm doing that show. What else am I doing? That's really the only role that I have right now. I've certainly auditioned for plenty of things, but as far as I know, nobody loves me.
That's actually an interesting point. A lot of people don't realize that a majority of being an actor is getting rejected.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over again. How do you prepare yourself for that type of thing?
It still hurts me. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by some of these chats. I should stop looking at that. You're supposed to look at that, not me. Rejection. Well, having an awkward childhood helps prepare you for that, I think. But you get over it. The thing that it becomes difficult is motivating yourself to spend an hour on an audition for a thing you're fairly certain that you're not going to get, and that is most of my job. I would say for most working actors, the majority of your job is auditioning and failing, and the gigs are just these tiny blips that show up in between those. So you get used to it. It's especially nice when you don't have to leave your house for an audition, or like on-camera auditions are the worst. Especially when it's a role that you're like, oh, no one's gonna hire me to sell toothpaste. But yeah, I would say also that a smart move for someone who is looking to become a professional actor is to lean into that fear and pain that you experience during rejection, because that therein is where the magic lies. That's, you get used to being in that space, and those nerves can be malleable. It's, you know, it's not a negative thing. The nervousness is better than apathy, and is a tool that can be used to your advantage.
Huh.
And that's how I justify not booking anything.
Okay, fair enough. We have more questions in the chat, just letting everybody know. You can type it in there. I will get to your questions. Do not worry. We have from Beth, I am excited for season 5 of MHA. When were you auditioning? Was there a particular character you wanted to get before you were casted for Momoa?
Hell yeah, I wanted the lead, damn it. Obviously, I want the lead. I also auditioned for Bakugo. But I'm so grateful that I got in the show at all. And if I didn't get to be one of the main characters, then I would definitely prefer to be the guy that shows up and makes fun of the main characters. So that's a joy. I actually play a small role in the first episode too. If you'll listen, there's a bit part that's me.
So let's see. Well, actually, this is more of a comment than a question from Sarah Weichman. I just finished My Roommate is a Cat, and oh my gosh, it made me appreciate my kitty so much. And there's a kitty right there. Look at that kitty.
There's a little Haru right there. That show affected me so much that I went and got a cat.
Really?
Yes. And
that's awesome.
I went to the SPCA, and Jeremy Inman, the director, and also a cat lover, encouraged me to do it. And there's this one day when the fates just guided me to the SPCA, and I was wandering around. I wasn't like determined to get a tuxedo cat, you know. The cats choose you, but I was like wandering around like a weepy idiot, like walking to every cat and just feeling their rejection and apathy. And then I like sat down next to this one room that was all windows, and this little one like popped out of a little cave and like started butting her head against the glass and was like, take me home. So I'm real method.
So let's see, we have another question from the chat. Have you ever been out in public and some event or people watch causing you to think how you think a character you play would react, or how would they reply? Like an OB quip to something as a kid at a store or asked by their parents.
Interesting. Maybe more so when I was like doing stage work, because that's, you know, that's more involved, and you end up really kind of living with a character. With Funimation, it's like I kind of create less of the character, and I don't spend a lot of time outside of the booth actively trying to adjust who this character is, because so much of what the character is has kind of already been created by, you know, the original artist and director and the original Japanese seiyuu. And for the most part, it's my job to kind of, as accurately and honestly as I can, portray a version of that to the English speaking audience. So I take a lot of cues from the original performance. And, you know, a lot of what would shape a character and having mental exercises like that in public, which is, I think, a great exercise. And maybe I'll spend more time doing that, actually, if I ever go in public again. Uh, but a lot of that stuff, kind of, when you're in the booth, you know, a character is as he does, and so I don't get a lot of choices on how my character would emotionally react to a situation because the face has already been drawn. You know, I can't come in and be like, well, honestly, I've been ruminating, and I think in this moment here, when he has an exclamation of anger and remorse, that actually that there's an awkward bubbling up of laughter that he can't suppress that might come up. Because they didn't animate it that way. So I don't, even if I discovered that personally and what I think this character is, there's kind of there's a structure already there. In a lot of ways, I'm more of a studio musician than I am an actor, you know, if that makes sense. There's the script that I take cues from, but there's also the voice of the Japanese actor and the eyebrows of the animation tell you a lot about what you're supposed to do.
Do you try to let the animation that you see dictate, or do you kind of just work in tandem with what you see?
There's a little bit of wiggle room where I might say that I get to have some artistic agency. And within that wiggle room is a conversation that you have with the director. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm just a tool, and I'm here to help them get their job done. And I think that's part of the reason. That's one of the reasons I think people continue to work with me, because you know, I don't come in with like any demands about my own opinions. Like, I have my opinions, and if invited to, I might offer them up. But for the most part, like, I'm here to solve your problem, and your problem is dubbing this anime. And the chance that I get to kind of put my own spin on something comes in the first take. So when we're recording, pretty much how it always goes, it's broken up down into different cues, like I said, and then you watch it one cue at a time, or maybe a couple cues at a time, and you watch it once in Japanese, and then you do it again with the Japanese voices muted, just listening to the sound effects, and then you try to recreate what they did to the best of your ability. But there are some sounds that we don't make, or that they don't make, that we do, that doesn't cross-pollinate very well. And there are very few instances where a director might want to go in a different direction as the original Japanese. So that first take is when I get a chance to be like, what if it's like this? And if it matches the flaps, that's the most important thing, then maybe the director will like it and will choose to keep it. Or maybe they'll be like, actually, kind of need it to be this. And the director's putting together so many different pieces. It's different than when you have like two actors on stage and you kind of like see where they want to go and how they affect each other. You know, the director has plans for what your scene partner has to do. So they kind of need you to help fulfill their goal. I would say that more than anything, instead of focusing on my own like big opinions about what the character is, I try to focus on learning the vocabulary of the director I'm working with so that I can help paint the picture that they're trying to paint. And sometimes when I'm lucky, I might, they might ask for blue and I give them teal, and they're like, oh yeah, actually that works.
Huh, interesting. We have another question from the chat from Ronnie Bowman. What was your first main role character?
Ayumu from Is This a Zombie was my first leading role. My first named character was Alzak Connell from Fairy Tale. And the first time that I ever came in the booth to record a part all by itself was terrorist number 2 in season 2 of Black Butler.
I've spoken to other voice actors, and sometimes if they have roles like terrorist number two or background guy number one, they give them a whole backstory in their mind. Do you do that also?
I mean, I didn't. Not gonna lie. Um, I there's not. I mean, if I had time to sit there, there's like I said, I'm a terrible student. I used to early in my career, I used to really try to study the shows. So like when I did Is This a Zombie and when I did Guilty Crown and uh less so with Tokyo Ghoul. I think Tokyo Ghoul is about when I kind of stopped. But I used to try to get a hold of the original and watch all of it and have an idea about what was going to happen in that moment and then like try to figure out like what am I going to do? But you don't have the actual script, so it's not like you can work with the actual text to try to create something. And I found that if you're sitting at home making logical decisions about how you want some scene to play out when you eventually go to do it, like if I was supposed to come into the studio on Friday and on Wednesday, I'm sitting here watching that episode going like, oh, he gets really upset here. So I need to, you know, think about my traumatic past before I go into the studio to make sure I really hit that crying note. Then it's like it's like cutting up ingredients for making a recipe too early. Like you don't want to chop up all your veggies and then not cook them for 3 days. So the performance became more stale or even rotten. Uh,
Interesting.
push this analogy as far as I can. So these days, I exercise what I like to call willful ignorance. So I get an idea about what the show is. Maybe I'll watch the first couple episodes if I have time, and if they're available. Get an idea about what the universe is and what type of character this is. And then the preparation is less like me thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's more like, what's my vocal preparation? So if I'm playing a high-pitched character, like I need to go to bed early and drink lots of water and maybe even bring some tea and honey with me to try to keep my upper register as accessible as possible. But if I'm playing like Ishigami from Kaguya-sama, which I'm doing right now, like I can I can have a whiskey on the rocks and stay up, till 1 a.m. the day before. And it is kind of okay because he's down here all the time. He's talking like this. And I'm not suggesting that you try alcohol to make your performance better. But those are the big concerns. And then when it comes to actually playing the character, like the first few episodes is where you start to figure out where the voice lives. And then after that, my training is all about responding to stimuli and presenting intention. So if you have an idea about the core of where your character is sitting, then you just have to stay present, sensitive, and aware. And what's so beautiful about doing anime is that when you're in the booth, all that stuff that helps tell the story is already there in your face. Like movie actors don't get to hear like the musical score that's happening in that really intense moment that they're in when you watch the final product. But like I get to come in and at the end of season 1 of Tokyo Ghoul, when he like finishes his character arc and he becomes the thing that he'd been transforming into, and he has that moment of self-actualization and there's that badass guitar riff. Like I had that in my ears when I had those lines to say, and that's so much easier to like shove you in the emotional place that you need to be. And then instead of me making choices, I'm just responding to stimuli. And so it's kind of like whatever, my entire life and all the things leading up to this moment are going to be the things that are in the pot, the ingredients that create whatever's about to come out of me. And if I am willfully ignorant about the moment that's about to happen, if nobody's telling me like, hey, this is the scene, where your best friend dies, then in the moment in the booth, when we get to that cue, like all of this is fresh and I get to watch it as an audience member. I go, oh my God, what is happening? And then the director's like, go, press play, say the words. And then before you know it, like I don't have to try.
Oh, that's actually kind of cool.
I only do.
So on the same wavelength, we have another question in the chat from Kelly Gordon. It says, "How was your mental acting out of the torture scene with Jason? The scene was horrific, but the results in the end was awesome."
That one was difficult, and it's difficult in different ways for different reasons. So making incredibly violent sounds isn't necessarily an emotionally challenging thing to do. It is a physically challenging thing to do. And that particular episode, like, luckily Mike McFarland, a brilliant director and person responsible for a large amount of my career, prepared me, and he like warned me like this is going to happen. And so that was one of those, days the day beforehand, I was like, didn't speak at all. And I came in with all of this specific throat stuff to try to keep from completely destroying my voice. But that episode, he's screaming in the background the entire damn time, but he also has a very soft-spoken inner monologue that's going. So like screaming and soft-spoken inner monologue, those things don't go together very well. The technical aspect of getting through all that kind of allows you to not think too much about how difficult it's going to be to get there emotionally. And the less I think about it, the easier it is to get there, because the thing that gets in the way the most, I think, as an actor, is that part of your frontal lobe that is always using some percentage of your mental capacity on judging you. And if you can train that thing to serve you, then it can become a very powerful tool. So instead of worrying about, am I upset enough right now, I worry about things like, am I clenching somewhere in my body that's preventing my full instrument from doing its job? Are my feet aligned? Are my hips stacked under my shoulders, under my knees, or above my knees? Am I present, sensitive, and aware enough to allow stimulus? Because the idea is to become more like a baby and to turn off all of those things that we learned how to do as toddlers that prevent us from being toddlers. You gotta learn how to live in society and not respond to every impulse that you experience. But if you start to chip some of that stuff away, then it's like, it's like when it's the middle of the night and you're in bed and you can't sleep and you're reliving some embarrassing memory, and you find yourself experiencing that same emotion very intensely. It's like that, but I'm just watching it happen. So I'm already seeing, if I just make myself empathetic enough, then I don't really have to work to get there emotionally. Physically, it was a pain in the ass doing all that screaming. Honestly, the torture sounds were interesting to get through, and one of the things like I got hung up on is like trying to not make them all sound the same. And I think we managed to do a pretty good job with all that. But more than anything, with that episode, there was all the physical torture, but then it's cutting in between that and these moments where he's inside his own head, and he's talking to Rize, and he's reliving memories from his childhood and his mother never being around and her, dying because she was constantly taking care of other people and not really taking care of him. There was nuggets of that scene that were relevant to my personal life that made all of that a very cathartic and intense, that's not a good descriptor, experience. So that the what you hear coming out of me didn't take a lot of time to manufacture. It was pretty easy to like dig into my own personal trauma and pull that out. And that's why I played the crazy people.
We have another question from the chat. You actually hit upon this before about being in the booth. Usually you're by yourself. So they're asking how much interaction, if any, do you have with other voice actors? So do you have any interaction at all, or is it always just you by yourself?
it, it's always by yourself, except for one time. And this has never happened in the history of anime. There was one show I worked on. David Wall was the director. It's called Hitorijime, and it's a love story between me and a character played by David Mantranga. And some of the scenes, like the really important scene between our two characters where we're just alone, they're very, very like very intimate scenes and very beautiful and very like grounded. You know, that it's not a very anime show, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of heightened dialogue. It's very intimate. And David wanted to really work with that intimacy, or David Wald, not David Mantranga. Well, both Davids, frankly. And he actually set up a booth for us where Mantranga and I were able to record together in the same room. And it's really difficult and expensive for them to do it that way, because you know, you can't easily talk over each other and you both have to match flaps. And so the engineer has to be pulling in two different audio tracks and messing with both of them at the same time. And the engineer was amazing and a genius. So they were able to pull it off, but it's in general, it's not very cost effective to try to do it that way, but it was so enjoyable to get to do these like really sweet, subtle, intimate scenes together. And it had been years since I'd actually gotten to like act with another actor. So that was really, really exciting. But in general, it's totally alone in a dark room by myself.
Now, speaking of interacting with other people, when you were on the stage, you do this, you have to go, the show must go on. You mess up a line, whatever, you just keep on going. With anime and dubbing, how many times do you do the same line over and over? Like, do you just like, I'm tired of doing the 38th take of this one line? Has that ever happened?
I don't know if I've ever gotten to a 38th take, except when I had to record things by myself. If it's me directing myself, then there will be 38 takes. But in general, a director's going to give up on you by like take 10. You know, because there's only, and it varies. When I'm really in the groove, like we can get through some scenes where it's like first take or second take and we move on. But every once in a while, I might end up having to do something like, 8 or 9 or 10 times. And it's either because we can't figure out the read, or a lot of times it's just timing. You know, I think a lot of directors believe like if they haven't figured out a read that you want by the third take, they're not gonna. So like get what you can and move on. And the number one like rule is that it has to fit the flaps. So at the end of the day, if you're like having a lot of trouble with the line, the second you get it to match flaps as best you can, you kind of gotta move on. Because really the schedule, I forget the exact amount of time, but you're only allotted a very short amount of time per cue based on, you know, the hours they give you. So to stay on track, you gotta like knock that crap out. It starts to become second nature though. And once you, especially the first few episodes of a new show, you're still figuring out the rhythm between the way that the writer is writing, the way that you and the director are working. But well, I find that a lot of times you'll start to get an unconscious understanding about the speed at which some of these characters will talk. And then the real tricky stuff is the internal flaps. You know, your first job is to make sure that your line begins and ends at the same time as the animation. But sometimes there's weird pauses in the middle that you want to justify. There's maybe strange lip flaps where you might want to emphasize something. There's a lot of weird technical stuff. Really, most of dub acting is about tempo and pitch.
So I guess you are right when you're saying it's more of a musical performance. Interesting. Let's see, we're running out of time, but we have Yeah, I want to get to this a couple questions before we hear our final thoughts. So let's see. Has it been cool to delve further into the fruit basket story than the first fruits basket, or was it strange to reopen the story?
Wait, I was never in Fruits Basket. Say that again. I wasn't in Fruits Basket.
Not sure
I
if
think
you
I was.
Not sure if you read the Fruit Basket's manga, but playing Kyle against Fruit Basket's Brotherhood, as I like to call it, has it been cool to delve further into the Fruit Basket stories other than the first Fruits Basket, or was it strange to reopen the story?
Never read it. Don't know anything about it.
Okay, so let's moving
Oh,
on.
that was voiced by Jerry Jewell.
There you go. Thank you. Look at that. Good job, chat. Let's see.
Who Jerry Jewell and I have been mistaken for each other many, many times, and he's voice matched me before. And he could probably just kill me and take over if they ever needed that.
He'll be your replacement.
I think he physically would be capable of murdering me. He's very fit, and he could take over my voice roles.
I do want to mention we have the pandemic going on, and you did say that you're doing a lot of work inside your home. Can you quickly mention how is that working from home, doing in your booth? Like, what kind of difference is it at home as opposed to going down to the studio?
I mean, really, at this point, I would like to never leave my closet again. It's tricky in some ways. You have to engineer a lot of your stuff. So, when you go into the studio, you can just be an actor and walk in, and they have snacks they give you. And then they push all the buttons. So I have to push the buttons now, but I'm starting to get used to that. And it's real nice being able to just walk into your closet without any pants on and do your job. And not to mention the studio. Funimation Studios is like a 30 to 45 minute drive for me, depending on traffic. And I always end up getting booked between like 4 to 6. So I'm always driving through traffic down a gnarly highway. And for a long time, the only vehicle I owned was a motorcycle. So I was basically like putting myself and my life at risk every time I went to go do that.
You see, you're doing it all for the fans. Look at that. Good. Look at that. You're putting yourself out there for the fans.
That's how much I care about the fans. That's true.
You mentioned the cues and the and doing the scenes. Now, when you're in the animation booth, do you go from beginning to end, or do you jump around like they normally do whenever you're doing regular acting? I would guess you would say things are always filmed out of order.
Mm-hmm. For the most part, you go in order. There might be certain situations where you'll jump around, like I've done some shows where maybe my character like speaks in 2 different voices. There's some episodes where like Kaneki has different versions of himself inside his head. So when it's like in season 3, when he's Heisei, oh, spoiler alert. But you should know this by now. Heisei Sasuke hears Kaneki's voice in his head. We would go through the whole episode as one character and then go back through the episode as the other one. Or if we know that like there have been sometimes where like maybe it's a high-pitched character and maybe they have like a scene at the beginning where they have to scream their face off. And so we'll save that till the end of the recording so that I don't destroy my voice before having to like do the rest of the episode.
Let's see. For back to the chat, is there a particular word you have trouble saying at any given time?
Oh gosh, there have been weird words. I'm so bad at remembering things like this. Whenever it happens, I try to like be like, write this down, remember the weird thing that happened in the booth. I'm really not going to be able to pull one out. There's
like names of characters.
Oh, I'm terrible with names. I always get those wrong. And there's certain words together that that can be frustrating. Like when words end and then begin with the same letter or
like
vowel
seashells.
sound. Well, and you got to decide whether you want to separate that sound to make it 2 words or you want to sound like a human. And when I first started doing anime, I had all this theater background, so I was very careful about my diction. But you know, sometimes you gotta say probably instead of probably.
So we have, I would say, about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure we get the social media stuff out before we run out of time. So where can people find out more about you? Where can people contact you? All that fun stuff. Lay it on us.
First off, go to Cameo or Zobi.com to get personalized videos or autographs mailed directly to your home. Check that out. The second thing you definitely need to check out is an Instagram page called Haikus by Haru, which is my cat's Instagram page. She writes haikus and takes pictures of herself. Please go follow that. If there's not more followers there after this, I'm gonna be personally offended. You could also find me on Instagram at not Austin Tindle. That's where I post anime related stuff. And I have my own Instagram page, which is Austin Tindle. My Twitter is Austin Tindle. I have a Facebook page that is also called Austin Tindle, I think. But to be honest, I don't really go on Facebook anymore. So you're going to have difficulty getting anything out of me there. That's it.
Okay.
I think.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. So let's see, we have, I'd say, 4 minutes left. So do you have any final thoughts you want to say about anything, about your career, about any advice you might want to give, or about anybody who's just thinking about they want to be a voice actor just like you?
Oh gosh.
Say.
There's I don't know, what is there to say? I would say the thing about being an actor at all, and being a voice actor is just being an actor, and you need to get that education under your belt. You know, understanding thought beats and intention and objectives and super objectives sounds vague and kind of silly at first, but it's going to be what makes you a good actor. Invest in figuring out what your natural voice is, because that's what you have to offer. Learning accents and impressions is all awesome and very cool and great tools to have under your belt, but it is not as important as figuring out who you are, specifically you, and having a realistic understanding of how you come off to people. And you know, stay polite, professional, and persistent. When you audition for something and you've never worked with this person before, you know, you're auditioning for the role, but you're also auditioning for being like someone that they're willing to spend 10 hours in a room with. So it's like being on a first date, like don't lie, but present the best version of yourself. And you know, keep in mind that you're going to want a second job, because especially if your ultimate goal is working in anime, it doesn't pay as much as you would think. So always have a backup plan. You know, I still do other jobs on the side. And most people do. Most people get another job somewhere in the industry, whether it's writing scripts or, you know, or directing or being a production assistant on sets, all sorts of that jazz. You know, don't sell your soul for a bowl of porridge. Make sure you're in it for the right reasons, because the stuff that seems like is going to make it interesting is not. And unless you wake up every morning with a burning desire to tell stories, like you might resent this career choice. Oh, how depressing. Follow your dreams, kids.
I do want to add just quickly add that when we were talking about being rejected for auditions, sometimes you may not be right for that role, but if you do bring yourself, the best part of you in there, they might remember you for something else.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And you know, it sucks when you don't get cast as something, but what sucks worst is getting cast in something that you weren't meant to be in, and then everyone hating you for ruining their favorite character.
So thank you very much. I just want to mention once again, make sure you go to cameo.com, look up Austin to get some really cool shout outs. As he mentioned, it helps pays the bills, and you can get your own personalized little Austin shout outs, which is awesome. So make sure you guys do that.
I'll dance for you.
There is tons of other programs on the EMCON Anime Fest. So go to www.emcon. Let me try it again. www.eastmetal.info.
Do that.
Yes. And also, I know in the chat, Kelly has put up some stuff for the Facebook page for the EMCON EMPL Anime Fest. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And everybody have a good one.
Bye. I can't do it. I can't make a heart.